Tonight we're doing the knowledge. Please welcome the well-educated Jimmy Carr. The well-informed Joe Brand. The well-read Graham Linehan. And the, well, you know, it's Alan Davies. And if you want to call me, you know what to do. Jimmy goes... Knowing me, knowing you. Graham goes... They don't know about us. Joe goes... I know him so well. And Alan goes... No, no, no. There's a spelling issue there, Alan. I know what you want to know. Once and for all, how many moons does the Earth have?
Nobody knows. We're not doing that this year.
No, we're not.
3.
Oh, what a pity. What a pity.
1. Just because it's called the moon doesn't mean it's the only one, it turns out.
The moons, it would be called.
Oh, 6. You're not doing yourself any favours early doors. 2. Oh!
This could go on for...
It could. So let me stop you right here. The point is, very, very on in the A series, we said there were 2.
Are you taking that back?
Yes.
What do you mean?
I
rely on this show. This is all I know.
This is the whole point of this round, in fact. Facts are not permanent. We thought there were 2, and then we said, oh, no, it's either 1 or 5, we said, in the B series, because we were acting on the latest info that we had from the scientific community. And this has changed. Now, NASA describes them as mini-moons, but we have about 18,000 moons.
I thought it was the same moon.
Bits of it, you mean?
No, I thought the ones that we keep seeing was the same one over and over again. That was wrong.
No, you're talking about the mini-moons. There was, like, 1 extra mini-moon.
No.
Or just that...
So every night you're saying it's a different moon.
He's saying that. There is a celestial body that we call the moon, which is obviously the one that's recognised and that rises...
I'm not saying
every
that.
28 days. Well, you're not. You're saying there are lots that look...
No, I'm saying it's the same... I'm pretty sure. Until I came onto this show, I was pretty sure it was the same moon.
I think I'm with you. Yeah, I think it's just one moon.
Now, that moon is the same...
That's our team's decision.
That's the same moon, as in this bottle is the same bottle is... It's the same bottle as it is.
How do you explain this?
That's another one, exactly.
Well, it looks pretty similar.
They're not the same. That's my point.
Yeah, well, there's...
See, suddenly we've got 3.
I'm not getting mine out, but can I just say... If there's so many, why haven't we noticed them before?
Well, the reason is that they are actually tiny. It's only recently they've run computer simulations to show 18,000. One of those has been observed, has been given the exciting name RH120, which orbited the Earth 4 orbits in 2006 and 7. Then also known as temporally captured objects. They're captured into an Earth orbit, perhaps for a short amount of time. But as satellites of the Earth, non-man-made, they are moons. That's what a moon is.
But the man-made satellites are satellites, right?
Yes, they are. But to be a moon, you have to be a celestial body rather than what you know.
Well,
you
that
could
makes
count
me a moon, then.
Yes, exactly. You are. Precisely. And you orbit my life.
You have to be in orbit for at least 5 years before you can claim benefits.
But the quite interesting thing about this is the point that raised Jimmy Carr's tremendous eyebrows earlier, which is that facts don't remain stable. Things we know or think we know will be untrue. Very good. Will be untrue in a number of years' time.
Yes. Appropriately, you look a bit like
do a
Patrick
Mexican
Moore.
wave.
Yes, you do.
We just don't know.
So I did a course at university called...
Shut up.
I bloody did,
Yeah.
and it was called The Sociology of Science, and yes, I got a grant for it, because it was a complete waste of time. But what I learnt during that course is there's no such thing as a fact.
Yes, this is precisely our point. Indeed, at medical colleges, they usually teach that half of what the medical students are going to learn will be considered untrue in about 10 or 20 years. And this is known by academics as the half-life of facts. That's to say, you know that half of it will be untrue. Unfortunately, you don't know exactly which half. And on QI, an estimated 7% of the things I tell you this evening will be shown to be untrue in a year's time. And if you're watching a very old repeat on Dave, a much bigger proportion.
It's probably untrue.
It's probably the whole... Even what I'm saying now is untrue. I'm not even saying it.
I'm not on the show.
We actually have a chart showing the rate of decay of QI facts. And you can see there's a series A on the right, and plotted against it is the 10th series, J. And so, as you can see, the further you get away, the greater the number of
60%
untruths.
of things in the first series
are now untrue.
Bollocks.
If that's true, yes. And
We do talk a lot of bollocks, in fairness.
But the most important thing you'd be excited to know is that that means over the years, cumulatively, you must be owed a lot of points. And going according to this theory, things we have said are wrong, a proportion of them are likely to have been right. Therefore, we have actually calculated how many points we owe you.
Suddenly, this has gone brilliantly. Suddenly, this is... Well, Alan
Jimmy?
is going to be way out in front, isn't he?
Jimmy, we owe you 43.58 points. Joe, 84.73.
Can I use them in Sainsbury's?
I'm giving you permission. If you work at Sainsbury's and she tries to claim them, yes, you can. The audience are owed 23.24. Well done. You haven't done anything. Alan, you are owed 737.66.
Are those transferable? If I went on to... Have I got news for you? Could I use...
Yes.
Could I write I've got 24 points that I could use
You can
here?
take this. Yes.
I can just
use
Oh,
them.
no, fabulous.
Yeah. Ian.
Mastermind, can I have it on mastermind?
I don't think you would slip that in somehow.
Someone's going to have to answer a lot of questions to beat that.
Of course, unfortunately, Graham, you get nothing.
Yes. Yeah, no.
That's really unfair. You're playing it a first time and you get a huge disadvantage.
Yeah, well, you needn't have pointed it out.
I'll try and find a way to make it up to you in some way by giving you a random 600 points. I'll give you some examples of facts that we gave in good faith on QI. So in the I series, we said nobody knows how to tell the age of a lobster.
Wow.
Well, that was only a few years ago.
Ask it.
I think that's what you said on the time. We
That's
should have
right.
had a klaxon.
Is that now right?
No, it isn't now right.
Now learn how to
one day.
communicate with them. Let me look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Hold. 11. Everyone knows that.
But in the I series, we said no one could tell the age of lobsters. But since then, Canadian scientists have discovered the way you do, that if you dissect their eye stalks and count the rings, you know how old they are. That's not a very kind thing to do.
You know how old they were.
I think that's
There's a
reasonable
flaw in
point.
this plan. I still think you should ask them first. I said their eye stalk.
Another one was in the G series. We said giraffes' necks may have evolved for fighting each other, which was commonly held by quite a few zoologists. But it now seems this hypothesis is not believed. And in
They
the A
used to
series...
like wading across deep rivers.
Yes, that was giving their necks above. Very, very deep.
As the river got higher,
Yeah.
they evolved. That might prove to be correct.
It might, you see. Who am I to say it isn't? In the A series, we said that the best-endowed millipede had 710 legs. Soon afterwards, a millipede with 750 turned up, but that's still the greatest number we know. But
Is there someone checking them?
Yes.
I like the idea of counting a millipede's eggs. You would lose... You'd have to keep going back.
Yes, you would, exactly.
1, 2...
It's the same
I'd say
thing.
that many times.
It's the same thing with all these things. Before they count the legs, they kill it.
Yeah.
So the legs are very still. Pluck them off. 1,
She lets me...
2, 3. It might still be alive. They might think it was dead, but then they just hear it go, ah!
You know, that's an interesting fact. That's how they, it's how they make worms. True story.
Brilliant.
Hey, a worm would come along. Are you not doing anything with these legs? You counted them off the millipede. Can I have 4?
A new species is born.
Yeah. And that is how sausage jolts are made.
Jacksons, exactly. We've discovered a lot of new science here, none of which is likely to be disproved, or possibly may come round again to be proved. Now, how much do you know about Scotland's Mr. Smelly?
Was he one of the Mr. Men that was dropped?
It's a very good point. I'm telling you, William Smelly, 19th century gentleman. He came from a family...
Really smelly.
We know very little about him, actually, because he came from a banned Protestant sect who were so persecuted that they didn't keep any documents about their births, deaths and marriages.
I think he's fairly persecuted at school as well.
Being called Smelly.
Like
I am stinky Smelly. Oh, original, thanks. But anyway, he rose from relative obscurity, and then he got paid £200 for heading up the team on something that has a thistle as its emblem, but has in its name something that means British.
Of course, the
yes,
British...
Say it.
Encyclopedia Britannica.
That's the right answer, the Encyclopedia Britannica, which
That's
is...
surely worth nothing, really?
Yeah?
Surely it was easier to do that in the days before the internet, though.
Yes.
If you tried to research now, you get sidetracked. I get very sidetracked very easily. Yes, I'll just get a B for bras. Oh. It's a day lost.
I hate Encyclopedia Britannica because I had very aspirational parents and everyone else in my class was reading Jackie magazine. And I had to read bloody Encyclopedia Britannica.
It was such a symbol of that, wasn't it?
Oh, my God.
It's like a dictionary that sort of just won't stop.
It won't.
You just a word and then goes, and another thing, here we go.
It is discursive, that's very true. Another of its early editors was called Andrew Bell, who was 4.5 feet tall and had a very big nose, as you will see.
Oh.
Looks slightly like me, rather disturbingly.
I'll be honest with you, I think that's a regular-sized nose on a tiny man.
He had a great sense of humour, though. If anybody pointed out or laughed at his nose, he would rush off into another room and come back with a bigger one made of papier-mâché.
I bet he could tell when Mr. Smelly was coming there.
I'll tell you what I know about that guy.
Yeah.
Very little.
Hey! That is quite good. I had to think about that. Anyway, the first edition of Encyclopedia Britannica took 3 years to write, cost £12 for 3 volumes.
Three volumes, the world's knowledge.
Yes, but the first volume is A to B. He obviously thought, oh, sod this. Don't A to B, I've only got 1 volume. Do C to Z in 1 volume. So...
The deadline was looming.
Yeah, exactly.
With the decay of facts, I presume it's all bollocks.
Yeah, exactly.
This is a good test for that. What facts are in there?
One is K for Kensington. See if you can come up with a good definition of Kensington.
Kensington.
Borough in London. A place, an area of London town.
No, nowhere near. A pleasant village 2 miles west of London. Which is what it was then, you see.
Wow.
And California here is spelt with 2 L's, and it's called a large country in the West Indies. Possibly an island or a peninsula, it's not known. That's pretty way off,
I
isn't
like
it?
the... Well, what's the... I mean, there must come a point where he went, is this... I mean, we don't know anything about this. Shall I put it in?
Yes.
California, it could be a place or a thing. No one knows. Might be a person. Good luck.
If you look at
What does encyclopedia mean? Because it sounds like a kiddie fiddler on a bike.
There's a big difference between P-A-E and P-A-I, paidos and peidos. But it is very tricky, I grant you. Could get an idiot into trouble. I didn't mean that in that way.
Oh, what you're laughing at?
The entry for woman in the original version just says the female of man, see homo.
He will tell you everything you need to know.
Because he's their best friend. Applause is defined as following: an approbation of something signified by clapping the hands, still practised in theatres. In the 1960s, an American called Dr. Harvey Einbinder, who so hated the Encyclopedia Britannica, he wrote a book... Hate it! Exactly. He wrote a book where he listed all the things that were wrong in it. It was 390 pages long.
Oh, I like the sound of
The myth
him.
of Britannica.
What's his name?
Harvey Einbinder.
Does he only have one
We
binder?
meet at last, Mr. Einbinder.
It's a massive binder. Don't touch my binder!
Maybe that's why he hated...
This is the binder you seek.
Encyclopedia Britannica has 52 binders and I only have...
Binder!
He might have pronounced it Einbinder for all I know.
Binder?
William Smellie was the first editor of the Encyclopedia Britannica. And what did the inventor of the thermometer spend 30 years measuring?
I'm going to say temperature, OK?
You know what, Alan? You've got points to burn.
Sometimes it's right, you know, sometimes it goes, yes, it is.
Exactly.
I know a joke about thermometers, about nurses and thermometers. It's about a rectal thermometer.
Go on.
Well, it's just a nurse finds a rectal thermometer in her pocket and goes, "Oh, some arsehole's got my pen."
It's an old joke.
Very fine.
One very old nurse's joke that we said was that a nurse comes running in and says to the matron, "Oh dear, I think I've got something the wrong way round. You asked me to prick someone's boil."
Very good.
I do know quite an interesting fact about thermometers. The difference between an oral and rectal thermometer.
I hope you do know the difference.
Yeah. Taste.
His name was Sanctorius Sanctorius, at least that was his Latinised name. He was from Padua, and there you can see him.
Right.
He's weighing himself. That's a special
weighing
balance he had
himself?
created. Every single day he'd weigh himself and the food he ate, and indeed the faeces and urine that he expelled, he excreted.
Was it some sort of weird Weight Watchers thing?
Well, what he discovered is that his urine and faeces weighed only a fraction of what he'd eaten and drunk, but despite that, he stayed the same weight, which is amazing, he thought. He thought, why is it that I put in, say, 100 pounds of food, but I poo out only 30 pounds
You're not taking
of faeces?
30 years. Does it not work out that there's a fuel thing?
It is easy to look back at past generations and say, how can you not have known? But, of course, none of them knew. And really, before people like him, who's almost one of the world's first scientists,
Yes, but
they hadn't measured and calibrated things.
You're absolutely right about all of those things.
Well, as right as we know.
However,
Yeah.
30 years? I mean, really, after 3 years with the
Oh,
same...
no, he had a theory, but his theory was wrong, that's all. His theory was that the rest came out of your skin, so it was very dangerous to cover most of your skin because you wouldn't let the poison out. He knew that faeces was poisonous, at least toxic and bad for you. With smell is a big warning, obviously.
Sorry, your faeces smell.
Parma violets. Yeah.
Jimmy's making noise.
Point at it.
They emit a totally different... So it's very unusual. It's 1 in a million people who have noisy shit.
Very good. He co-invented with his fellow at Padua, a much better-known scientist. Who would that be in the same period?
Co-invented.
His co-inventor. Not Da Vinci, no.
Is it going to be
Marconi.
centigrade or...
It won't be future, it will be past, whatever
Galileo.
it is. Galileo is the right answer.
Oh, I nearly said
I was going to say Scaramouche or Fandango.
Galileo Galilei. He
could do the fandango!
Yes, he could, darling. That's right.
Thunderbolt Lightning!
Please,
Very, very frightening!
stop.
That's what one of Jimmy's poo sounds like.
No.
Galileo, Galileo!
No,
You're right in there,
either.
Jimmy!
Yeah, in a minute, I'm reading a very interesting article.
The faeces is made up is 70% liquid, 30% solid. It just takes a bit of separating out. Not that I would urge you to do it when you get home.
When I get home, why wait?
I'm going to centrifuge in my dressing room.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Of that dry weight, 30% is what? It's
Corn on the cob.
More than 30%. Yeah, we've had 2.
Oh dear heavens.
Do you know that when they go into space in a weightless environment, they poo into the wall?
What do you mean into the wall? Like in a hole in the wall?
A hole in the wall, yeah.
Sorry, on the space station, they've got...
Smear it on the wall. But it turns out the best way to relieve yourself in a weightless environment is through a hole in the wall. It's easier to do that than to go down or up.
I do that with the shower.
You've admitted it, which many people
Who
would.
doesn't poo in the shower?
You bad
Jimmy doesn't. Everyone would know
man.
if
You've been
Jimmy
the good
pooed
boy
in
of the class until now.
Pulling into the wall of the space. So the space station is built with a little glory hole thing. Like,
I wouldn't call it that. You're too much slightly in the know to know what that is.
like in a welcome break services.
We all
You've
know
got
what
the-
that is.
on the second junction. What? What's your problem? Everyone knows that. Never on a Tuesday. Very different sound.
glory hole on a space.
There's also about 3 people on the station at any one time. You know, by a process of elimination, it's only going to be one of 2 other people.
That's true.
This is John.
I was just.
Elaine.
You'd recognise it.
I just thought there was a 4th one, and that was their role in the mission. I mean, if you're going to Mars, it's going to take 5 years. Your
sorry,
job
Dave,
is
I
a
can't
very
do
important job. It's to go in this room with a hole in the wall.
And people guess your name. No, but the other thing that happens when you go to space is you don't snore, I believe. Do you know this?
I didn't. That's
Yeah.
a beautiful little
You
fact
can't-
so far.
Because you sleep in these... Well,
Yes, of course.
because there's no gravity, it doesn't affect your vocal cords.
That's an extreme cure. Though,
I'm as
isn't
good
it?
at
I'm going to try the little things first.
Yeah,
That's the next step.
it's quite expensive to go to
Imagine there are
Virgin
wives
Galactic.
watching this going, yep, it's going to have to be space. Even then, I think he might wake me.
Anyway, what can you find out by hiding under a student's bed? Yes, Dave.
I've got to go for this. Is it a massive pile of porn mags?
That's probably true.
Oh, I thought
Those
that was
are the
go off.
days.
No, I think it's highly...
I think now you've got the internet.
I'm afraid, yeah, you wouldn't
Broadband are doing a terrific job. Terrific.
I think that's a bit sad, though, in a way.
It's not, yeah, they
for
were...
mags.
Not for men.
No, not personally.
Yeah, they did this in the 1930s. It was extremely unethical, but we're in pursuit of knowledge, which is our theme
Oh,
today.
So they were researchers.
They were researching, and the only way to find out what people are saying without knowing they're being overheard was to hide somewhere and take notes while they were talking. And they wanted to know what sort of things students spoke about.
So they used to hide underneath the beds?
Yeah, and take notes.
It sounds to me, Stephen, I don't want to, throw stones at these lovely scientists, but it sounds to me like a cover story.
You wait till I get to some other unethical scientists. You hold that back, because it gets worse.
Well, okay, well, tell me
We're on
more.
the subject of unethical research. And basically, this was the only way you can have of being sure that you know what people are talking about with absolute clarity, because people change what they say when they know someone's listening, someone outside their circle. But the idea was to discover what the main subject was that people spoke about.
They just thought,
listen,
they'll never look under the bed. Why would you look under a bed? There's nothing interesting down there.
where they could overhear them. And they discovered that 40% of their conversation was devoted to...
The opposite sex.
No, it wasn't. It was themselves. It was a study in egocentricity. They spoke about themselves.
I would never do that.
Yeah.
Jimmy Carr would never let that happen.
Oh, don't. That's the worst thing in the world you can do. So there are other dodgy experiments. There was a personal space invasion in the men's restroom, a study of 1976. Someone hid a camera under the partition, under the sort of floor
Someone,
space.
Stephen. Someone. You seem to know a lot about this, Stephen. I've got a couple of questions. You like technology, don't you? And there's a camera in the men's room. Oh, I'm just doing a study. Are you?
It was...
Apologise, Stephen.
It was to see how they filled space. If there was one person at, say, the third one in a row of 6, where would the average person go? Would it be as far away apart, or would that look too obvious?
It's very interesting when you go in there, because I used to be, I don't have it anymore, I don't know why it's gone, but I used to be quite a shy peer. You aware of shy peeing as a thing?
I have a technique for that.
What's your technique for shy peeing?
My technique for shy peeing is I think of the most embarrassing thing I can do. I just think of doing something like saying, I think I love you, or just something like that, and then it's all go.
When you say I love you, you automatically
Pee, have a little wee.
I don't need to say it, I just need to think it. And I always have to imagine it very, very realistically. I imagine the guy going, what, did he really say that? and then the next thing, it's just, no longer a problem.
It is very maddening when you've been absolutely bursting to go and then, hello. Come on! Come on!
There's a
find
story about
men's room...
Bono going into a men's room and standing up there, and the guy standing beside him, and long silence, and then eventually the guy saying, Bit of stage fright, Bono.
And in 1942, and this is the one where you're going to go, yeah, right, a psychologist called Lawrence Lashan tried to use sleep learning at a summer camp to cure some boys of nail biting. He recorded the phrase, "My fingernails are terribly bitter," on a phonograph and then played it 300 times a night in the boys' tent or room or whatever it was.
And they all went on to kill and kill again?
One boy appeared to respond positively, but then after 5 weeks, the phonograph broke. So to keep the experiment running, he stood in the boys' dormitory through the night and repeated the phrase himself. "My fingernails taste terribly bitter." This seemed to work, and he claimed it as a success. It's thought generally these days that the boys were awake and just freaked out by the experience. They stopped biting their nails to make the nasty man go away. It's all very peculiar. Anyway, moving on. How did the Romans tell their Keiths from their Kevins? Some Keiths and Kevins there, in case you don't know what they are.
Keith Richards.
Kevin Bacon.
Kevin Bacon.
Keegan.
Kevin Keegan.
Keith Lemon.
Well done, that's enough. That's all, you won't get any more.
The other ones don't look real.
No, they don't.
And they're the actual Romans.
Yes,
I think on the far left, that's Burger King, isn't it?
They couldn't, because in Latin they both mean the same.
No, it's not that. It doesn't have to be Keiths from Kevins. It means how did Romans know people's names? How
They know people's names.
Yeah.
Did they,
Because we all forget them.
remember them?
No, that's the point. They'd forgotten.
Badge. They had a badge.
No. You have a special servant.
A servant to say your name.
A nomenclator. No, not to say your name. I'm assuming you remember your own name. The point is when you forget other people's. So you come in and the person whispers Alan Davies, and you go, "Alan, how lovely to see you," because otherwise you've forgotten. That's the point. Like a politician. It's
very useful.
Yeah, it's absolutely right.
I have a technique for names.
Yeah.
If I've forgotten someone's name, I just say, "Excuse me" for a second, and then I go home. Every time.
You're the nomenclature,
Yes.
and you keep saying, "This is Steve."
Yeah.
This is Fiona.
Stevius,
So
Fiona.
after a while, you go, "I know that one."
Yes. You're allowed
Tell
to
me the
tell
ones I
them.
don't know. She now thinks I've forgotten her name. And I really thought I was in there. No, you've just gone, "It's Fiona." It's as if I didn't know it was. Look at her face now. He's going to go over there and say he knew. I was just doing my job.
Yeah.
He wants you to know that he knew you were Fiona.
This
This is your wife, Susan. You've been married 15 years.
I actually do have a system involving my wife, which is we go over to someone whose name I don't know, and I just stand there in total silence, and then eventually my wife says, "I'm sorry, my name's Helen," and the guy says, "Oh, I'm Gary," and I go, "I'm sorry, this is Gary."
Should I?
Gary, Helen, Gary.
Thought yeah.
Yeah. I just, as soon as they say it, you go, "Ah, blah," and then you
Is
say
that
it.
a system, per se? That sounds like you being awkward at a party.
So, moving on to self-knowledge. How do you know when you've had enough?
Someone always tells me.
It's a tap on the shoulder, isn't it?
Yeah, I think Jimmy.
It's the cold steel around both wrists. And the clanging of the door. And the one phone call. I've had enough. Who am I speaking to?
Oh dear.
Are we talking food here?
We are talking food. Yeah.
I don't really.
No, the fact is that this is about knowledge, and it's you think you're full, as it were, you know you've had enough, which is obviously not knowledge, it's memory. You can test this on people with short-term memory loss. I mean, amnesiacs who immediately forget what's just happened. And
Sorry, what were you saying?
Exactly. Thank you very much. So there are people who have this condition. They forget that they've eaten, say, 20 minutes, half an hour afterwards, and you ask them if they'd like to eat, and they will eat 3 or 4 heavy meals when they're obviously completely stuffed because they don't remember eating. They literally don't remember it. And there's a trick you can do with a bowl of thick soup, which has got a clever little mechanism on it, so that while people aren't looking, it fills itself up again, or empties itself ahead of time. So people think they've had the full bowl of soup when they've actually had less, or they've actually had a lot more.
I've got a similar device for desserts, which is it's my girlfriend. She won't order one, but I'll order one, and then it just goes missing. It works with chips as well.
Very good.
She hasn't had dessert in 10 years.
Well,
a lot of half desserts.
Anyway, that's enough about that sort of thing. Diet. We feel full after a meal, not just because we are, but because we think we are. A question about kiss and kin now. What's the best way of avoiding talking to your mother-in-law? Yes, Ken.
Removing her vocal cords with some pliers.
That's the best way of avoiding her talking to you.
That's... Well, lean in for the kiss.
Oddly enough, you're in the right hideous area.
Really?
Charles's hair is being stealthily removed from his head by Camilla's hair-grabbing, hair-eating hat. She's operating it slightly with her hand. And the hair has been sucked into that hat.
She's looking down at the
hat
tile.
devours it.
Like, if you don't like your mother-in-law, what hope is there for you? I view the mother-in-law as its Christmas future.
Yes, that's true.
If you don't like your mother-in-law, you're in all kinds of trouble 20 years down the line. That's what you're buying into.
My mother-in-law makes absolutely no sound when she moves.
It's remarkable. Like Jeeves.
She is the stealthiest person.
You've got a stealth mother-in-law.
Honestly,
Is she sprayed black?
She could be a brilliant spy, you know. You might be in a room and you're looking at a thing or something, and then suddenly she goes, hello, oh, come from? Where did you come from? It's a long way from the door. Anybody would have gone, made a little noise. There's nothing.
Oh, that's terrible. It's like the famous story of the boy who was, you know, having a play with himself in his bedroom and with his eyes closed.
By the way, I was not playing the story before you conflate the mate and had what was that story on that thing where Alan Davies and his brother-in-law? Let's just separate those two things.
He closes his eyes in bliss, and when he opens them afterwards, he just finds a cup of tea next to him.
She thought, well, your father always likes a cup of tea after.
And the biscuits. Oh, gracious.
Look, Les Dawson gets a hard time for mother-in-law jokes. They are the best mother-in-law jokes.
Remind us of some, then.
Copyright
Les Dawson.
Copyright Les Dawson was walking down the street with my wife. I saw my mother-in-law, she was being beaten up by 6 men. And my wife said, aren't you going to help? I said, 6 should be enough. Just a brilliant... the weirdness, when I was growing up, when I was sort of starting in comedy, he was like, oh, yeah, he just tells mother-in-law jokes.
I know, he was frowned on.
Sort of a genius.
Oh, he was a complete genius.
The mother-in-law came around.
Yeah.
The mice were throwing themselves on the traps.
But also, that piano-playing act is one of the greatest things.
Oh,
of
his
all
piano
time.
play, which is very difficult to do.
Yes,
he wasn't
I believe
really
it.
quite good. He'd do the Blue Devil. Like that.
Hit the bum note.
Enough. We haven't even begun to answer this question yet. It's about sexual taboos with mothers-in-law, which you kind of...
Sexual taboos with mothers-in-law.
And there's particular languages
So
where
do
you have a
not-
special language
What?
in which to speak to your mother-in-law. It's called an avoidance language.
Oh.
So you have your own... The
I
natural
think
line
we've got one of
language.
those, haven't we? It's called small talk.
But that's... Yeah. It has a different vocabulary. It's absolutely different.
What, so a whole language where you can talk to your mother-in-law, so it's just safe subjects?
Yeah, you also have to avert the eyes and look at the ground, which is part of using that language. And there are certain words that don't exist in that language, most notably
But
things
why?
like pubic hair and
Why?
sweaty smells, because there is a taboo and a sense of respect that is given by the male to the mother of his wife. It's in Australia. There's some Aboriginal peoples who have these avoidance languages. And it's really fascinating, isn't it? I mean, in Japan, they have a special language when talking about the royal family, for example.
Is there a phrase for you've spilt the Tippex? Someone needs to address that.
Ay, you're so bad. You're so bad. Now, what did this bird bring to the German city of Klutz?
Chlamydia.
Chlamydia.
Chlamydia stalk. That sounds like a
Chlamydia stalk.
desperate man back from a business trip in Holland going, the thing is stalks.
Is that a particular, like, a giant stalk?
I'll show you a
find
picture of it. It's
in
been
Germany?
stuffed and is in a museum.
How big is it, really, then?
Well, it's hard to sell the scale,
Oh.
but stalks are quite big, but that's an arrow through it, or spear, rather. They call it an arrow in German, which is Pfeil, and it's known as the Pfeilstorch, which is just literally arrow stalk. Now, you may say, what's odd about that? Nothing particular. But what they recognised was that the arrow was not German. Indeed, it was not even European. But they recognised straight away
flown a very
that it
long
was
way.
African. What on earth would a
really?
bird be doing with an African spear in its neck, they thought.
My God.
So they puzzled out the possibility that birds, rather than disappearing at winter...
Oh, went to Africa.
Yes, and
Sorry, are
migrated.
you saying it flew back with that?
Yes. It survived.
No
I know,
way.
yeah.
That was... I mean, no
it
way.
Yes, it did.
It flew to Germany going, well, I'm never going back there. The worst holiday ever.
I find that the survival of that bird, I find extraordinary.
It is, but you hear stories of bullets piercing people's heads without somehow managing to...
Not narrow, travelling
Yeah.
the length of its neck.
Somehow managed
through its head.
I know, it is astounding that it flew.
During this...
Something's different.
Yeah.
Do you think it was originally from Germany, or it got kind of... It was from England, and somehow... Well, we're going right a bit.
It might have slightly tilted to the right. We don't know. It was in 1820.
In the Spanish Inquisition, they used to put people on spikes. They put the spike up your bum hole and right up through you, and it would come out your shoulder, and it would miss all the vital organs, and you'd be alive.
That's not nice.
And then they'd put you out.
But you would...
I'm beginning
come
really
right
to
up
think
there.
less and less of the Spanish Inquisition, as we honest.
350 years it went on. I thought it was, you know...
Oh, no.
A couple of
Couple of
weeks.
weeks.
Then it was safe to go back to Marbella. It wasn't always as torturous as
They did some terrible things.
they did it, but not for 300 years solid.
When it wasn't torturous, what would they do?
Well, they would test your faith, but they wouldn't punish you by...
There was a lot of tickling.
There was 100 years where it was mainly Chinese burns.
You do believe in God? Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Yes, you bloody do.
Anyway, until that time, people had observed birds disappearing, and they'd assumed all kinds of things, that they went underwater, that, you know, they changed into other animals. But there was no particular evidence anyway, except they disappeared. 1820. This was the first kind of clear evidence, as it were, that the bird had been to Africa. And so things began to get put together. Samuel Johnson wrote that swallows certainly sleep in the winter. A number of them conglobulate together by flying round and round, and then all in a heap throw themselves underwater and lie on the bed of the river. Well, that's what he thought, because swallows disappear in the winter, and he assumed they hibernated like other animals. And butterflies, of course, they migrate thousands of miles, but we never see them. Why don't we see butterflies migrate?
They're invisible.
Because they're caterpillars. They migrate as caterpillars. They migrate like super slowly.
Time to get there.
Yeah, they're very, very hungry. I read a book about it.
And the reason is that they are actually a kilometre up. They're incredibly high. Are they? Yeah. It's really astonishing. These fragile, delicate creatures manage to get the height. And then when they're in there, to orient themselves in such a way that they know they're all facing the right direction and get
They're all
thousands of
going
miles.
like this.
It is astonishing, isn't it?
Well, I
It's genuinely
remember
incredible.
being on the school bus once. There was a beautiful butterfly on it, sort of fluttering around trying to get out, and I caught it in my hands. I went, "Go free," and I let it out the window, and a bird swooped down and next to me.
Oh,
And
such
that's a metaphor for life.
It
that
is, isn't it? Completely is. Now, get this right, and you can have your weight in points.
Ooh.
I'd like you to add these numbers up. Look at the screen. Add up the numbers.
Hang on. Pen.
Oh.
999.
No.
431.
No. I'll let you have, which the winner of this competition did not have, the opportunity to see it again. All right? Go. 2-second burst. Add that up.
I was about 897.
No. I mean, it'd be astonishing if you got it, but in Japan, where else, they have this, it's called flash anza. And actually, the world record holder had a shorter time than that. You have to correctly add 15 three-digit numbers, and he did it in 1.7 seconds. Now, there's a particular reason Japanese people are very good at this.
I think I know the reason. It's
Yes.
in Malcolm Gladwell's book. It's because of how they process, how the language processes numbers. There is a strange thing in Chinese and Japanese, in both languages, with the number, if you say the numbers together, it automatically adds them up, sort of linguistically.
Yes, but there's a really interesting addition to that, which is that what they're doing, and their fingers are the giveaway, they do this. What do you think that is?
That is a living one of those.
He's a savant.
Oh, it's a herd of those. I read that book, and isn't there a thing, this Malcolm Gladwell book called Outliers?
Outliers,
It's brilliant. But the thing about it is they use fewer syllables in numbers so that they have a greater aptitude for adding up more quickly as children.
That might help them. The answer, incidentally, was 1,966. But the secret actually is in the Chinese-Japanese abacus. They're actually doing the action of the abacus. And the more amazing thing, perhaps, is that at the same time, they can have a conversation with someone. Because it's another part of the brain that's being engaged. And they'll say the answer, but they won't remember a single one of the numbers they added up. And actually, I thought about this, and I thought, this is just crazy. But I've got a composer friend who came round to my house, and I happened to have a full orchestral score of Don Giovanni on the piano. And he,
Of course you did.
Well, I did. People do. And anyway, he just opened it like that. And he started playing it, and sight reading it like that, on the piano. And talking to me about it, he said, it's this bit where it does that. And I suddenly took apart what he was doing. It's not written out as a piano score. It's written out as violins, oboes, flutes, cor anglais, which you have to transpose in your head while you're doing it, because it's written in a different key from the rest of everything else. Oh. So he's doing that and playing a beautiful transcription of an orchestra and talking to me.
Well, the people that do that, they're slightly magic.
Yeah.
And that's and that's a spell, they're saying.
Yeah.
I go, yep, fine,
I believe
buy
that.
Might as well be.
I know, conductors, trained musicians. It is
10,000 hours. 10,000 hours.
That's it. The Beatles, Mozart, all of them, as we know. We think it's a very convincing.
I've done 10,000 hours
of this.
Sitting around vacantly.
And you're really getting good at it now.
Being wrong about stuff.
Which brings me to some very complicated adding up of my own, as a matter of fact. Oh, my gracious goodness heavens. The scores are unusual because we have, of course, been giving scores to make up for our errors on account of the half-life of facts. So, in last place, I'm afraid, it's magnificent for a first appearance. Minus 19, Graham Lennon! Graham, congratulations. In fourth place, with 23.24, it's the audience! Well done! And in third place,
So
with...
I'm behind the audience.
Yes, I'm afraid so. It's deeply unfair.
I'm on the show.
I'm so sorry. And in third place, with plus 33.58, is Jimmy Carr. In second place, with plus 85.73, Joe Brand. And today's out-and-out winner with 689.66 is Alan Davies. So it's thank you and good night from Graham, Jimmy, Joe, Alan and me. Be useful and lovely to yourselves. Good night.
Stephen Fry's out there confronting prejudice, a powerful look at being gay throughout the world on BBC iPlayer. Here on BBC Two next, Sarah Cox calls the shots on Buzzcocks, or head over to BBC Three now for more laughs right through until midnight with American Dad.